I know I've already posted for this month, but I wanted to release another episode talking about my favorite movies of the 21st century so far. The New York Times recently released an article polling critics and fans alike about the 100 greatest movies of the last 25 years, and I figured I'd release an episode about my favorites as well. Talk a lot about A Christmas Carol on this, obviously, but this will give you the chance to learn about some other movies that I love that have come out in the majority of the time that I've been a film fan. So this is nothing more than my list. I am not going based on acclaim or awards or box office, anything like that. These are just my favorite movies that have come out since the year 2000. People can debate whether the year 2000 itself counts, but I am counting that as part of the 21st century. So from January 1st, 2000 till today, counting down my 25 favorite movies. So stick with this and I will get started here. Number 25, All of Us Strangers from 2023. An intimate, beautiful British film, Andrew Haig's All of Us Strangers is a different kind of ghost story than we're used to. Andrew Scott plays Andrew, a screenwriter who moves into a new apartment building that is mostly empty. He soon falls in love with his neighbor, played by Paul Mescal, and he spends time visiting with his parents, played by Jamie Bell and Claire Foy. The only thing is, his parents have been dead for years. There's no big twist that his parents are ghosts. Andrew knows what he's doing, and he's projecting the version of his parents that he needs right now. Still, he is able to tell them all the things he was never able to, since he was only 12 when they died in a car crash. Jamie Bell and Claire Foy are just wonderful. I particularly love the scene where Andrew meets with just his dad, who says he always assumed Andrew was gay and is fully accepting of him. Andrew Scott has given a string of incredible performances, but this is his finest to date. An introspective, romantic, charming performance that deserved more awards recognition than it got. There are some lovely moments where he bonds with his much younger love interest over generational differences, which really adds a lot of richness to this story. The Japanese novel the film is based on is not a gay romance, but director Haig drew from his own experience. He's about the same age as Scott, which only makes the movie more lived in and wonderful. Number 24, The Death of Stalin from 2018. About as dark comedy gets. The death of Stalin sees the Soviet Union leadership in disarray following, well, the death of Stalin. Armando Iannucci finds the humor in the chaos of politics better than anyone, whether it's modern British cabinet ministers or members of Stalin's inner circle. Instead of distracting us with fake Russian accents, Iannucci cast British and American actors and let them use their natural accents. It's much funnier if the neurotic Khrushchev is played by Steve Buscemi and the seemingly jovial Molotov is played by Michael Palin. There are also some standout performances by Andrea Riseborough as Stalin's daughter Svetlana, who hilariously doesn't quite seem to grasp that death is final, and of course Jason Isaacs, who steals every scene he's in as the self-aggrandizing and comparatively moral General Zhukov. I saw this one in theaters when it was on limited release, and while the theater was pretty much laughing throughout the movie, I'll admit I found myself laughing out loud at a lot of jokes no one was getting. They are really packed in here, so make sure to watch this a second time. It's a razor sharp satire for our time, but it's also just an all time comedy masterpiece. Number 23, Insomnia from 2002. I have kind of a weird relationship with Christopher Nolan's movies. Most of his films, up through and including The Dark Knight, I can at least appreciate, but I have a hard time with many of them after that. I did think Oppenheimer was a strong film and an understandable Best Picture winner, but it's still Insomnia, a remake of the Norwegian film of the same name, that sticks with me the most. Al Pacino plays Will Dormer, a police detective investigating the murder of a high school girl in Alaska. During a shootout with a suspect, Dormer accidentally shoots his partner, whom he had recently learned was going to testify against him to internal affairs. Dormer claims it was a mistake, but as the case goes on and Dormer loses more and more sleep, he begins to doubt everything. He ends up in a game of wits with an incredibly creepy man played by Robin Williams, who may be more like him than he cares to admit. You can keep your diner scene in Heat because I love the boat scene in this with Robin Williams and Al Pacino even more. Pacino tends to get stereotyped as an over the top actor in his later career, mostly by people who have never seen films like this one. It's one of my favorite performances of his whole career, as we see the gradual change in Dormer day after day and sleepless night after sleepless night. Mara Tierney also provides a wonderful supporting performance as the hotel owner Dormer befriends. A lot of Christopher Nolan movies are about shocking twist and spectacle, but this one is much more about the bare bones, strong characters, incredible performances, and nerve-ending psychological tension. Number 22, Hereditary, from 2018. Back in 2018, I saw Hereditary in the theater without knowing much about it, and I am forever grateful that I did. More than once during the runtime, Ari Aster's directorial debut makes you think it's going in one direction, only to surprise you. While it is shocking the first time, when you go back and watch it a second, you see it's all there. It's an incredibly tight script. It takes a lot to unnerve me, and I don't really base my favorite horror movies simply on how scary I find it, but Hereditary got under my skin the first time I saw it. My favorite kind of horror movie is a movie where from the very beginning you know something is wrong, and that feeling of dread hangs over the entire movie. Hereditary, however, has a feeling of hopelessness that you feel at the beginning, and that only gets worse as the film goes on. Everyone said it when the film came out, but it does bear repeating that Toni Collette is phenomenal as Annie, the mother trying to hold things together in spite of tragedy. She was robbed of an Oscar nomination and win. We all know it. Gabriel Byrne is also great as her supportive husband trying to hold things together. And the brilliant supporting cast also includes Alex Wolff, Millie Shapiro, and the great Ann Dowd. More so than other films on this list, I'm skirting around the plot a bit because if you haven't seen Hereditary, I really don't want to ruin it for you. There are undeniably other horror films it will remind you of, and a few people did think it was too derivative. I'm obviously not there with it, but if it bugs you, I get it. I think it's unique enough in its feel and characterization to justify a familiar plot. Number 21, The Ghostwriter from 2010. Like with Insomnia, this is not a film I think will be on most best of the 21st century lists. I'm a sucker for a great psychological mystery, and when one is done as well as Insomnia or The Ghostwriter, it becomes a favorite of mine. A good tight mystery is one thing, but a good tight mystery that leaves you with psychological and ethical questions is catnip for me, basically. It doesn't hurt that The Ghostwriter is one of the most consistently heart-pounding movies of the last 25 years. It's not even all that fast-paced, but it builds its tension perfectly. Ewan McGregor plays an unnamed ghostwriter who is hired to assist with the memoirs of totally not Tony Blair character Adam Lang. In the process, the ghostwriter uncovers an unseemly conspiracy involving the War on Terror and Lang's past. Lang is played by Pierce Brosnan in what may just be his finest performance. He nails that kind of faux chumminess and sinister undercurrent that you really need for this character. It's pretty shameless in its indictment of then recent historical events, but even if you watched it with no knowledge of the real history, you'd be sucked in. Kim Cattrall, Tom Wilkinson, and Timothy Hutton round out the supporting cast, with a memorable cameo from Eli Wallach as well. Robert Harris, who wrote the novel of the same name and co-wrote the screenplay, also wrote the novel that Conclave was based on, proving he knows how to make literally anything gripping. There might be countless thrillers out there, but it's rare to see one done so exquisitely as The Ghostwriter. Number 20, Lady Bird from 2017. High school movies have been a staple of American culture for decades, but they never did anything for me. I went to a private Christian school, but despite that, I like to think I had a fairly normal high school experience, all things considered. Yet, every classic high school movie feels like it takes place on some alien planet. The emotions just have no connection to anything I ever felt, and I leave the movies feeling empty and confused. Lady Bird was the first high school movie that actually made an emotional connection with me. It's not the specific subject matter that made a connection either. It's about a teenage girl in an early 2000s Catholic high school in California, nowhere near my own high school experience. However, the characters feel like real people, not movie teenagers. They're all full of self doubt and insecurities about both themselves and the future. In addition, Lady Bird, played by Saoirse Ronan, has an extremely troubled relationship with her emotionally abusive mother, played by Laurie Metcalf. Ultimately, she learns the lesson that some of us don't learn until college or later. You don't need to reinvent yourself, you just need to find your people. It's a simple message, of course, but it comes about organically and sweetly in one of multiple scenes that got me crying. This is the second movie Greta Gerwig directed and the first she directed on her own, and I still find it her most moving. It's a small story, but it's an extremely satisfying one. If, like me, you struggle with all the classic high school movies, see if this one does something for you. Number 19, Killers of the Flower Moon from 2023. There's another film further down this list that is often switching spots on my list of favorite Martin Scorsese films, but for right now, this is my second favorite of his of the 21st century. It may change tomorrow. A sprawling, haunting epic, Killers of the Flower Moon often involves Scorsese grappling with his own role as a storyteller. You can watch it and enjoy it without being aware of any other Scorsese movies, but the knowledge of the others just adds to its richness. Leonardo DiCaprio plays Ernest Burkhart, a greedy and unintelligent man who moves to Oklahoma near his uncle, William King Hale, played by Robert De Niro. Hale paints himself as a friend to the local Osage tribe, but he is actually just after their money, which they have come into through the discovery of oil. His plan is to have his men marry and then murder off the women for their rights to the money. Ernest marries Molly, played by Lily Gladstone, in one of the most breathtaking breakout performances in the history of film. Regardless of screen time, this is her story, and Gladstone reminds us of it every time she is on screen. At one point, she gives one of the most haunting screams I have ever seen in a movie, and it chilled me to my bone. This is a story that could be told as an unfolding mystery, as it is in the book, but Scorsese opts for something different. Ernest is a pathetic, morally bankrupt man, and when certain things are revealed about him, we're not surprised and we're not supposed to be. He claims to genuinely love Molly, but we know that at some point he's going to have to pick a side. When the moment does come, it's a horrifying scene. Scorsese has never technically made a horror film, but there are a handful of his movies that feel like horror films. The Last Temptation of Christ, Taxi Driver. This is absolutely one of them. When I watched this in the theater and it got to the inevitable scene I'm speaking of, it felt like a climactic moment in Hereditary or Rosemary's Baby. The final scene of this film is the one that will stick with you the most, and it's the kind of scene that only someone like Scorsese, at this point in his career, could ever include in a movie. Number 18, Heretic from 2024. There's something extremely cathartic to me about religious horror films. I'm sure it partially comes down to a religious upbringing that I've had to work through, deconstruct, and eventually break free from. But there's just something about good religious horror that can't be beat. In fact, there's only one horror film on this list that doesn't involve religion in some way, but Heretic is the most overt. However, unlike so many religious horror films where the villain is either a religious fanatic or a supernatural force, the villain of Heretic is, essentially, a Reddit atheist. Two Mormon missionaries, played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, visit the home of a seemingly charming man played by Hugh Grant. However, they quickly learn that he wants to argue religion using all of the arguments you've seen from the most annoying people online. They also learn over the course of their discussion that they're going to have a hard time leaving the house. I can't say enough about how perfect Hugh Grant is for this movie. The character needs to be charming and unassuming enough that you believe the missionaries will enter his house, but he needs to have that menace too, and Grant just nails it. I can't think of another actor who could play this role so well. So much of this movie is a pseudo intellectual discussion, and Grant is just so compelling. The script is really smart, but his arguments are littered with flaws, factual inaccuracies, and half truths. The missionaries catch some of them, and they miss others, leaving the audience to figure them out. When they do try to leave, things get even more twisted, and I know some people don't care for the second half of this movie. I disagree. I think everything that happens in the latter half of this movie is perfectly in line with all the ideas set up in the first. It's practically an immaculate script that I really came to appreciate more on a rewatch. It will creep you out, make you think, and make you laugh. Plus, it has Hugh Grant doing probably the worst Jar Jar Binks impression you've ever heard. Number 17, Black Klansman from 2018. Spike Lee loves to make movies that grab you from the first frame and do not let go. When he wants to make a point, he is not subtle, and his movies are all the better for it. Black Klansman tells the story of Ron Stallworth, the first black police officer in the Colorado Springs Police Department, who decides to investigate the KKK in the 1970s. The film boasts an incredible cast from John David Washington as Stallworth and Adam Driver as his number two, Flip Zimmerman. Two, his potential love interest Patrice, played by Laura Harrier. We also have Ryan Eggold as a clan recruiter and Topher Grace as David Duke. Grace also had a small role in Heretic, meaning he's in back-to-back films on my list. This film is kind of like a multi-course meal. When it needs to be funny, it's laugh out loud hysterical. When it needs to be dramatic, all the beats hit. When it needs to be absolutely horrifying in its depiction of racism, it does not hold back. And when it needs to be absolutely gut-punchingly heartbreaking, like it is at the very end, it will destroy you. There is not a false note in this movie. I saw this movie in a packed theater that was laughing throughout, but when the ending hit, everyone burst into thunderous applause before we all exited the theater in complete silence. It's something I'll never forget. I really like the way Black Klansman plays with familiar tropes. We all know the undercover cop story, but this film leans into both the hilarity and the horror of a black man infiltrating the KKK. It's set in the 70s and it is not subtle about its connection to current politicians, but why should it be? We live in a world where a US president could not even refuse the endorsement of the KKK. It's an angry movie, and it needs to be an angry movie. Number 16, Women Talking from 2022. A great filmmaker can make anything tense, even people sitting and talking. A classic film example, of course, is 12 Angry Men, which will have your heart pounding as hard as any thriller, despite it being nothing more than a jury deliberating. I think we need to include Sarah Polley's 2022 film Women Talking alongside 12 Angry Men in that conversation. The film tells the story of a group of women in a conservative Mennonite cult who have discovered a horrifying truth about the men they are married to. Some men have been arrested, and most of the others are away to pay their bail, so the women get some privacy for 2 days, during which they must decide on what they will do. The ensemble cast of characters is wonderful, as every character is given dignity, no matter what side they are taking. We understand their decisions and their arguments, and everything feels in character for someone in their situation. A lot of this, of course, is a phenomenal cast, including Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, Judith Ivey, and more. Ben Whishaw is also a standout as August, the kindly young man who has to write for the women, since they're forbidden from learning to read or write. This film is unbelievably tense. It's one of my favorite kinds of setups. One location, boiling tension, and richly developed characters. There are so many movies that have this kind of setup and then blow it by having a third act that takes place somewhere else entirely. But Women Talking remains a small story. We are living this with them. We don't even know where the movie's set. It's based on a novel that was inspired by real events in Bolivia, but there is no indication one way or the other here. It's all a mystery because these women don't know anything else. It won a well deserved Oscar for its adapted screenplay, but it deserved much more. Give it a watch if this one slipped under the radar for you. Number 15, Birdman from 2014. It's hard to think of another film like Birdman. Alejandro Iñárritu presents such a unique tale of an actor going outside his comfort zone that, no matter how much I describe it, you just have to see it. Michael Keaton gives the performance of a lifetime as Regan Thompson, an actor best known for playing the superhero Birdman. There is, of course, the added richness of Keaton's fame that came from playing Batman, but the character itself is not just riffing on Keaton's career. It's not a gimmick and it's not a joke. In fact, the character is extremely self important and bitter in a way that the real Michael Keaton never seems to be. But he is absolutely brilliant at playing the character nonetheless. The supporting cast is phenomenal, particularly Emma Stone as Regan's daughter Sam. She's the standout here. But we've also got Edward Norton, Zach Galifianakis, Naomi Watts, Andrea Riceborough, Amy Ryan, Jeremy Shamos, and Bill Camp. It's basically a dream lineup of character actors. Birdman is big and ambitious and arguably even pretentious, but everything works. In fact, it's just amazing how well everything works. The fact that it's about pretentious characters justifies it a bit, but it takes a lot of bold swings. This is, after all, a movie framed to look like one continuous take, where Michael Keaton's character regularly interacts with his superhero alter ego while trying to prepare for a play based on a Raymond Carver short story. It also kicked off a nice career reboot for Michael Keaton that has led to some fascinating projects to this day, and I hope leads to many more. I'm a big fan of his, and I'm really happy to see it. Number 14, Inside Llewyn Davis from 2013. When it comes down to it, if I have to pick a favorite director, it's the Coen brothers. This is their first, but definitely not their last entry on the list. Whether together or apart, Joel and Ethan Coen make films that always click with me. Even their weakest film, don't worry, I won't make you guess, it's Burn After Reading, is a film I highly recommend because it's fun and it's funny. But their best films are enigmatic character studies filled with mysteries and dangling questions that all benefit from multiple rewatches. Inside Llewyn Davis is the story of a folk singer in early 1960s Greenwich Village, played by Oscar Isaac, who is struggling to launch his music career. He is talented and passionate, but he is often an unpleasant person who doesn't think of others' feelings. He often regrets how he acts after the fact, but in the moment, he can be a self righteous jerk, even rejecting benevolence from those who genuinely want to help him. And he is regularly his own worst enemy, a classic Byronic hero. The whole film makes the folk scene seem gray and uninviting, but people criticizing the film for that miss that it's being seen through Llewyn's eyes. He's depressed and doesn't think people want to help, but it's clear time and time again that they do. There are some incredibly sweet gestures in this movie. One thing that does seem to change him, though, is meeting a pretentious and hateful jazz musician played to perfection by John Goodman. In him, Llewyn sees the worst version of his non compromising personality towards music, even if he doesn't immediately get better because of this. Like with the best Coen Brothers movies, the soundtrack's phenomenal. Every supporting character is pitch perfect, and the ending will leave you thinking long after the credits have rolled. I tend to have a more positive interpretation of this film's ending than most people, but that's too long to go into here. Watch it for yourself and see what you think. Number 13, The Personal History of David Copperfield from 2019. Director Armando Iannucci tends to go for biting political satire, but his take on David Copperfield by Charles Dickens is far sweeter. Still, it plays up the funny moments from the book and is frequently laugh out loud hilarious. If I had to pick a single word to describe this film, it's charming. Everything about this movie is so unbelievably charming with every character perfectly cast. Dev Patel plays David Copperfield, and he's the perfect foil to all the weird and wonderful characters he comes across. Veteran actors like Hugh Laurie, Tilda Swinton, and Peter Capaldi play their supporting roles perfectly, and the newcomers are brilliant too. Rosalind Eleazar gives a performance as Agnes that is so charming, so funny, and so scene stealing that I cannot believe this film didn't make her an A-lister. This is a film loaded top to bottom with incredible actors, and she blows them all off the screen. The world is so magical and immersive that you can't look away. It truly has a unique look and feel unlike anything else. A lot of films that are my favorites are tense, horrifying, and unnerving, but this is a big comfort movie for me. I can rewatch it at any time and feel better because it's such a fun and lovely movie. Number 12, Mulholland Drive from 2001. When David Lynch died in January of this year, it was a loss felt by pretty much anyone who loves movies. His dedication to and love of the movies was apparent in everything he did, and in many ways, Mulholland Drive is the definitive David Lynch project. Inland Empire is more twisted, and Twin Peaks has entered the public lexicon more, but Mulholland Drive sums up Lynch better than anything else. As with a good number of Lynch projects, things start out fairly conventionally as Betty, played by Naomi Watts, moves to Hollywood hoping to jumpstart her acting career, but things get progressively more bizarre over the course of the movie. We get a monstrous creature hiding out behind a diner, a cowboy who speaks in riddles, and pairs of characters who may or may not be the same person. Regardless of what the movie throws our way, we're in for the ride because, like all the best Lynch, Mulholland Drive is absolutely hypnotic. David Lynch made films that were dreamy in a way no other films were. The soothing but eerie music, the shamelessly colorful visuals, and the confusing manner of speaking all gave his films a unique quality that so many have tried, mostly in vain, to imitate. Lynch's films always make emotional sense, and this is his best example. You can get caught up in what you're supposed to think about a scene, but you should really focus on how you're supposed to feel. Number 11, Gone Baby Gone, from 2007. The third in my holy trinity of detective thrillers from the 21st century, Gone Baby Gone is an extremely well thought out film. Based on the Dennis Lehane novel of the same name, Ben Affleck's directorial debut shows that he took a whole lot from the great directors he had worked with to this point because it is quite the film. Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan play dating private detectives Patrick Kenzie and Angie Gennaro, who are hired to find the missing 4-year-old daughter of Helene McCready, played by Amy Ryan. I've seen Amy Ryan in a bunch of things, and she's always a standout, but her performance here is so transformative that I don't see her at all. She plays this troubled mother from Boston so well that you'll forget you're watching an actress in a movie. As to be expected in a story that involves a missing 4-year-old, the roads that Kenzie and Gennaro go down are not pretty. The plotting and pacing are perfect, and when the whopper of a reveal hits, you'll find yourself questioning everything. Not on a story level, of course, it all makes sense. You'll find yourself questioning the ethics of what has just happened and what you would do. John Patrick Shanley's Doubt is a play that asks you to leave the theater and discuss what you would do, and he considers that the second act of the play. Gone Baby Gone does that just as well, but without being as overt about it. There aren't easy answers here. Most of the characters think there are, but it's not like things go well for any of them. In addition to this, Gone Baby Gone boasts one of my favorite scenes of all time. Without spoiling the movie, Patrick has just done something he is feeling very conflicted about. He's outside the hospital with police detective Remy Brissant, played by Ed Harris. Harris delivers a monologue so powerful that the scene becomes the cornerstone of the movie. It really tells you everything you need to know about his character and foreshadows pretty much everything. It's an unbelievably powerful scene that I find myself returning to time and time again. Harris has been one of my favorite actors for some time, and this is the definitive scene of his career for me. All right, getting into the top 10 now with number 10, Nope, from 2022. When I saw Nope in the theaters for the first time, I remember thinking that of Jordan Peele's three directorial efforts to date, this would be the one that he would be most remembered for in 50 years. I absolutely loved Get Out, and I had a great time with Us, but Nope is something special. It's an alien invasion story, and a neo Western, and a horror movie, and a tale of Hollywood spectacle and exploitation all combined into one, and it works marvelously. Easily Peele's most ambitious film to date. Nope centers around Otis O.J. Haywood Jr., played by Daniel Kaluuya, and his sister Emerald, played by Kiki Palmer. Their Hollywood horse farm is struggling when OJ sees a UFO. The siblings then make an effort to get definitive, recorded proof of the UFO, knowing it will make them financially stable and probably famous to boot. Stephen Yun plays Ricky Jupe Park, a former child star struggling to stay relevant as an adult who has his own connection to the UFO. Frankly, the scariest scenes in this film are the flashbacks to a horrifying incident that happened on the set of his 90s sitcom Gordy's Home, which employed a real chimp as the title character. Jupe is not the protagonist, but he has such a richly developed backstory that he very well could be the protagonist of another film. That's how well the writing is done here. Michael Wincott also appears as an obsessive cinematographer who would like nothing more than to get a perfect shot at the UFO, whatever it takes. Like Peele's other films, it's beautifully shot, fiercely funny, endlessly entertaining, and thought provoking. It's his biggest masterpiece yet. Number 9, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story from 2007. The musical biopic has been a surefire genre for awards contention for some time, and while there are exceptions, it's not really a genre I'm drawn to. Plenty of famous musicians have led fascinating lives that have then been turned into boring movies following the same three-act structure as all the others. It's a disservice to those artists and their fans. Thankfully, these tropes are skewered to hell and back in the wildly funny Walk Hard the Dewey Cox Story. Parody is tough to do well. There's plenty of satire that can land, but to genuinely parody a film or film genre successfully and stick the landing is near impossible. Part of what works so well about Walk Hard is a consistent tone. Every actor plays the material razor straight, without fourth wall breaks. John C. Riley, who at this point was still best known for his dramatic work, is perfect as a title character, playing Dewey from age 14 to 71, playing up the ridiculousness of all the actors who played a young version of their character in a biopic. All of the standard tropes are played up to a ridiculous degree, from childhood tragedy to a life event leading the singer to write a song to the inevitable addiction scenes. If you're going to parody the music biopic genre, you need to make sure the music is good. Dan Byrne and Mike Viola wrote most of the songs here, and the songs are both musically interesting and laugh out loud hilarious. They all really feel like they could have been hits in the era they were released, from the country rockabilly flavored title track to the Ring of Fire esque Guilty as Charged to the absolutely hysterical line of protest songs Dewey writes in the style of Bob Dylan and the Byrds. At one point, Dewey goes through his psychedelic phase and starts writing complex pocket symphony style music in the style of the Beach Boys. Songs like Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains. And the creators even got Van Dyke Parks, Brian Wilson's co writer from that era, to submit a track for the movie. The attention to detail is outstanding. There's a phenomenal supporting cast with the obligatory long line of cameos you'd get in films like this. All of the musicians are hilariously miscast, like Paul Rudd and Jack Black as Lennon and McCartney, Frankie Muniz as Buddy Holly, Jack White as Elvis, and so many more. There's also a few musicians who play themselves, only leaning more into the bit. I laugh all the way throughout this one. There have been attempts to recapture this magic with other parody biopics, but this can't be touched. It's too funny. I don't know why they would even try. I love this movie. Number 8, The Irishman, from 2019. Here we are at the second Scorsese film on the list. Like I said, I tend to go back and forth on this and Killers of the Flower Moon, but it goes without saying that I love them both. While Killers of the Flower Moon benefits from knowledge of existing Scorsese films, The Irishman is truly the culmination of Scorsese's mob films to date. Mean Streets was about some low level guys who were never going to make it big. Goodfellas was about the high highs and the low lows, and Casino was about excess. But The Irishman is a different beast. Not unlike Walk Hard in literally just this one way. It's a lifetime spanning story of one man. Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, is really good at one thing: killing. He did it in World War II, and the mob finds use for him as well. He's only half Italian, so he'll never truly be one of them in their eyes. But he finds comfort in the surprisingly mellow and seemingly kindly mob boss Russell Buffalino, played in an against type turn by Joe Pesci. Russell is one important figure in Frank's life, but the other is the always charismatic Jimmy Hoffa, played brilliantly by Al Pacino. This is the perfect role for Pacino because he gets to be big and bombastic in the scenes of the public Hoffa, and then be open and intimate in the scenes of the private man. I love that this many years into Pacino's storied career, he can still blow us away. Unlike so many other mob movies, it's never a fun life for Frank. He doesn't have any good times to look back on. None of the hits are stylized in a way that suggests he's having fun living his life. There's a montage of him killing people and disposing of bodies, and it's purposefully methodical and non exciting. It's just a job for him. Even if you know the story of Jimmy Hoffa, and most people going into this have an idea, you're still hoping that things will go a different way right up until the inevitable moment. Scorsese makes it evident right out of the gate that he's deconstructing the genre and specifically his own movies. The opening shot of the film is a long take through a building as a cool classic song plays. It clearly evokes the Copacabana scene from Goodfellas, but instead of the club, it's a long take through Frank's nursing home. It's a brutal, hard hitting 3.5 hour epic that has one of the most devastating final acts in recent memory. I know the de aging tech bothered a lot of people, but the real Frank Sheeran never looked young. Find some pictures of the guy. And I have to imagine that's what they were going for with why Robert De Niro always looks like an older man in this. If you can't get past it, I get it, but you're missing out on a masterful film from a director in the most interesting phase of his career. Number 7, The Witch, from 2015. More religious horror. You're shocked, I'm sure. I've always been fascinated by the Salem witch trials and the pre revolution era of American history as a whole. Robert Eggers is a director obsessed with period detail, and his film The Witch really feels like an artifact from the 17th century. More than maybe any film, it feels like a horror story you'd hear around a campfire. Due to some disagreements, a Puritan family is removed from their New England settlement and forced to make it on their own. William, his wife Kate, and their 5 children do not have an easy go of it. While this is a slow burn horror film, it makes an interesting choice to show its monster very early. Thomasin, the oldest daughter, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, is playing peekaboo with her baby brother when he is taken and turned into ointment by a flesh and blood witch. This establishes the threat early on, and things only get worse for the family over the course of the film. However, witch or no witch, William, played by Ralph Ineson, just keeps making the family situation worse through his own failings. The third act takes some big chances that sound like they would never pay off on paper, but they all work marvelously. The first time I saw where this movie was going, I had the thought of, they're not really going there, but they do, and it's great. Whether you love American history, horror, or goats who may be the devil incarnate, this is the movie for you. Also, director Robert Eggers has announced he's working on an upcoming version of A Christmas Carol. Due to his love of horror and period detail, I have to say I'm quite excited. I've thoroughly enjoyed all four of his films. This is my favorite, but the others are great too, and I know he'll handle A Christmas Carol well. All right, number 6, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind from 2004. We are now just getting into the point where we're talking about my all-time favorite films. These next 6, pretty untouchable in my mind. A high concept movie to end all high concept movies. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is a movie that could only come about from the unique and twisted writing of Charlie Kaufman and the dreamlike direction of Michel Gondry. The premise involves a procedure that will erase all memories of someone so you can move on from a relationship. But if the story that comes from that premise doesn't work, it's all in vain. Thankfully, the story is beautiful. Jim Carrey plays Joel, a man opting to have his memory wiped of his ex-girlfriend Clementine, played by Kate Winslet. Over the course of the procedure, we essentially see their relationship in reverse, starting with the worst and the breakup and moving back to the beginning. Since it involves Joel's memory, the visual style really gets a chance to shine here, as there's no reason to attempt anything resembling reality. It's never a gimmick, though, and it all fits perfectly in each scene. As Joel begins to regret his decision with each memory that is wiped, and the film builds to the climactic scene where he and Clem met, we get one of the most beautiful moments in all of film. The beach house scene in Eternal Sunshine is stunning, heartbreaking, and impeccably acted by Carrey and Winslet. Carrey always had this in him, and we saw a lot of it in The Truman Show and Man on the Moon in the late 90s. However, what he accomplishes here shows that he's one of the finest actors of his generation. If you're new to this one, be prepared for an emotional ride, but you will not regret taking it. Number 5, In the Loop from 2009. Sort of a Doctor Strangelove for the War on Terror, Armando Iannucci's In the Loop is an uproarious political comedy that shows how one little mistake can lead to world-ruining disaster. It's a spin-off of sorts of his TV show The Thick of It, which inspired Veep in the United States, but you don't need to have seen the show to understand it. It involves Simon Foster, a cabinet minister played by Tom Hollander, who makes a definitive statement about a burgeoning war on a radio program. His boss, Malcolm Tucker, is livid at him, firing off a hilarious string of insults every time he's on screen. Peter Capaldi is just enjoying every moment of this role. Malcolm sends Simon to the States to get on the war committee and figure out what exactly is going on. Simon continues to make things worse despite his best attempts to help, and it becomes clear that he is way in over his head. Never has the banal nature of politics been this funny. A lot of this film is boring committee meetings that are unbelievably hilarious. David Rasche nails this kind of character perfectly with his Assistant Secretary of State character. There's also Mimi Kennedy as another Assistant Secretary of State who tries to keep a level head, her assistant played by Anna Chlumsky, James Gandolfini as a level-headed general, and Paul Higgins as Jamie MacDonald, the crossest man in Scotland. The political commentary is absolutely of its time, as is pretty much any political commentary pre-2016. Regardless, every single scene is filled to the brim with hilarious insults, brilliantly witty wordplay, and fantastic profanity. In the Loop has to feature the most creative swearing I've ever seen in a film. At the heart of it, though, we have a wonderful central performance from Tom Hollander. It would be a funny movie regardless, but Hollander manages to make Simon Foster simultaneously pathetic and pitiable. A lot of his mistakes are his own fault, but he does show genuine remorse for them, while nobody else ever seems to. When it's inevitable that the war is going to start, he is absolutely gutted, and you can't help but feel for the guy. He's one of our greatest working actors, and I'm always thrilled to see him pop up in a movie or TV show. Number 4, The Invitation, from 2015. I will by no means act like my list of favorite films is full of niche choices and cult classics. Most of these are critically acclaimed films that are at least relatively well known. However, I'm pretty confident that my choice of this 2015 horror film is my most obscure selection on the list. When I submitted my list of 10 favorites to the New York Times poll, I had to do a write in ballot for the invitation. Just in case you're wondering, there are two 21st century horror films called The Invitation. This is not the one with Dracula. When talking about the horror films that led us into the horror renaissance we're currently in, people usually point to Let the Right One In, The Babadook, and the aforementioned The Witch. They're all great films, but it's a shame that Karen Kusama's 2015 film The Invitation slipped under the radar. What's most interesting is that it has a lot of tropes that this current horror era loves, and I love too. Past trauma, slow burn tension, occult. It should have been a hit and it is begging to be rediscovered. It's my favorite horror film of the century so far. Logan Marshall Green plays Will, a man who receives an invitation to a dinner party with his old college friends. The invitation comes from his ex wife Eden, played by Tammy Blanchard, and her new love David, played by Mikhail Husman. And the party is at the house where Will used to live, where his son had died. While he's scared to go, he has the support of his new girlfriend Kira, played by Emma Yahtzee Corinaldi. When he arrives, all of his other friends are clearly worried about him, including party girl Gina, jokester Ben, fun-loving couple Miguel and Tommy, and the sensitive and caring Claire. These are very quick descriptions of the characters, but I don't want you to think they're just one note. These are all fully developed characters, all brought to life wonderfully by their actors. However, while his friends are clearly concerned, Eden and David seem a bit off. Things get even weirder when the gang meets Sadie, the young woman who's been living with Eden and David, and Pruitt, a seemingly happy man who still gives off a bad aura, played by John Carroll Lynch. The casting of Lynch here is brilliant since the actor has two typecasts, either a genuinely kind and caring sweetheart of a man or an absolute monster. He's played other roles, but when you think of John Carroll Lynch, you're thinking of Norm Gunderson or the Zodiac Killer. That leaves the audience guessing which direction the Pruitt character will go. Pretty soon, we learn that David, Eden, and their two unknown guests are members of a California New Age cult that has a strange take on grief. They show their friends a video about the cult, and everyone is some degree of unnerved by it. Things continue to get weirder and weirder over the course of the night, and Will is constantly wondering if he should leave or if he's just letting his grief get the best of him. I have to be honest, I've never seen a film evoke dread this well. As I've said with other films on the list, I love a good dread or impending doom movie, and this is my platonic ideal of a great impending doom or dread movie. We've all been at a party where the vibes are bad, and this is the most intense version of that imaginable. The vibes are just bad. Karen Kusama's direction is impeccable here, bringing things to a boil perfectly. There are a few times you think the tension is just about to boil over, and then it starts to, but we're not actually there yet. It takes a long time to get there, and it needs to. It's the kind of pacing I love. When it does get there, it is not disappointing. Number 3, No Country for Old Men from 2007. While most of the Coen brothers films are original stories, No Country for Old Men is based on the Cormac McCarthy novel of the same name. Of course, McCarthy's novel has an extremely Coen brothers setup. A down on his luck man who finds a small fortune and goes on the run, a strange and psychopathic killer out to get him, and a sarcastic sheriff on the trail of the killer. It's the story of these three men, played by Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, and Tommy Lee Jones, respectively, but they never meet on screen. They all come close, but they're always just missing each other. Like with The Invitation, it's an incredibly tense movie that will get me caught up in it every time I watch. I know exactly where it's going, but I can feel my heart pounding nonetheless, particularly in the hotel escape scene. Like with all great Coen Brothers movies, there are a wide range of incredible supporting characters here, too. One thing I've thought about on recent rewatches is that every character who says that Javier Bardem's Anton Chigurh is some kind of unknowable genius killer is an adult white man. Kids, women, and people of color all put up a fight against his ridiculous logic and ethical codes, and many manage to escape with their lives, some even slowing him down, like the famous scene with the motel clerk. Every Coen Brothers film will leave you thinking once the credits have rolled, but this one probably has caused me to do the most pondering of all their films. There's always something I notice that I didn't notice before, and my feelings about the characters have evolved considerably over time. I find Tommy Lee Jones' character in particular more and more pathetic each time I watch the film. It's not as overtly funny as a lot of Coen Brothers movies, but there are some brilliant moments of dark comedy, particularly in the way that people respond to the bizarre ways of Anton. It's one movie I'll never get tired of watching. Number 2, 25th Hour from 2002. What would you do if you knew you only had 1 day left? That's the situation the protagonist finds himself in Spike Lee's masterful 25th Hour. New Yorker Monty Brogan, played by Edward Norton, isn't dying, but he is facing a 7-year prison sentence for drug dealing, which is just 24 hours away from starting. He's going to hang out with his friends, stockbroker Frank, played by Barry Pepper, and teacher Jacob, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, as well as his girlfriend Naturelle, played by Rosario Dawson, but they all know things will never be the same. Even when he gets out of prison, life as he knows it won't be like this again. There is an air of deep sadness that hangs over the whole film, only heightened by the fact that it's set in New York City in 2002. The film was in early development when the September 11th attacks happened, and Spike Lee made the brilliant choice of working that tragedy into the film. There's that feeling of nothing ever being the same that hangs over Monty, and it's the same tragedy that was hanging over New York at the time. The film never makes the direct connection between the two, it lets us fill in the pieces. But there is a lengthy scene where we see the rubble of the World Trade Center outside a character's apartment. 25th Hour sets up a few plot lines and arcs, but like in real life, there aren't any definitive answers. This movie refuses to give closure to almost any of them. There is one exception. We do get the assurance that Monty's girlfriend does truly love him and will stay with him while he's in prison. Edward Norton gives his finest performance as Monty, whom we pity for the whole movie, despite his mistakes being entirely his own fault. He has wonderful moments with his friends and girlfriend, but the film's most emotional moment comes in the final car ride with his father James, played by Brian Cox. The senior Brogan goes into a long monologue about the life his son could build for himself if he ran away right now. As it goes on longer and longer, and his idea of Monty's whole life plays out, we forget we're watching a dream sequence. It's an amazing scene, and the more you watch it, the more you realize it's a dream James is having about his son, and not necessarily one Monty is having at all. It's such an intriguing scene to put this late in the movie, and it's one of my favorite moments in any movie. I mentioned earlier that Spike Lee often makes films that aren't subtle, and I love that. While there is one famously loud, brash, angry scene in this movie, and it's great, this is mostly a moody character piece. It shows that he can direct this kind of film with the best of them, and even better than the best of them. He finds things in this story and its characters that other directors never would. Also, two films in my top 5, this and The Invitation, begin with an injured animal on the side of the road and the protagonist deciding if he should make a mercy kill. I don't know what to do with that, but it's interesting. Number 1, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? From 2000. If you ask me to name the one movie that most helped me love film, I wouldn't have to even stop and think. It's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I first saw the Coen brothers' Deep South spin on the Odyssey when I was 11 years old, and I didn't really know what to make of it then. However, it stuck with me, and I kept thinking about it. I watched it more and more, and I started to notice everything from the mythological references to the religious overtones to the references to classic films. And it just made me fall in love with not just this movie, but it made me realize just how much movies could be. The story of three escaped convicts in Mississippi, played by George Clooney, John Turturro, and Tim Blake Nelson, who encounter a zany array of trials on the way to their destination. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a wildly entertaining ride no matter how many times you watch it. It's endlessly quotable. The soundtrack of bluegrass, blues, country, and gospel is perfect, and every performance is wonderfully dialed in. It's comedic, but it's always about the characters first, no matter how ridiculous their situations get. I always mention the parade of fun side characters when talking about the Coen brothers, but I think this is their best overall cast. There's a blues guitarist who sold his soul to the devil, a blustering and angry governor, a blind radio station manager, a one-eyed Bible salesman, and a terrifying sheriff who may just be the devil incarnate. The Coens love stories about karma, but it's not always negative karma. They're not opposed to redemption stories. It just has to be well-earned redemption. All three convicts earned their redemption at a different time throughout the movie,
and George Clooney's Everett has to earn it in back-to-back scenes to both improve himself and win back the love of his life, played by Holly Hunter. In the first of these scenes, Everett finds out that a song he and his friends recorded for a quick buck, Man of Constant Sorrow, has become the biggest hit in the area. He finds this out on stage when the guys start the song and the audience bursts into thunderous applause. The moment where Clooney realizes what's going on is probably my favorite movie moment of all time. In just a few seconds, he goes from shocked the song is starting to confused that the audience is enthusiastic to hear it to a wonderful realization when he puts all the pieces together. And it's just in a quick 2 seconds. Then, just a moment later, he realizes he needs to actually start singing the song. It's an absolutely beautiful moment, and Clooney sells it perfectly. There's also a great little moment in that scene where Holly Hunter's character is cracking up at seeing her ex-husband really go all out with his performance on stage. And she's both fully in love with him again and shocked at herself that she's falling for him again. I can't get enough of this movie. I talked about the personal history of David Copperfield being a comfort movie, but this is even more of one. From the opening moments, I am sucked in every time. They pull you into this world from the word go, thanks in part to that dusty sepia tint of Roger Deakins cinematography. Even if this wasn't the reason I'm such a movie fan, I would still adore this movie, because how can you not? So, there we have it. Those are my 25 favorite movies of the last 25 years. Just something I wanted to do to talk about some movies in light of the New York Times article. For those curious, Parasite from 2019 topped both the fan list and the critic/actors, film industry people list. That's a great movie if you haven't seen it. Most people, I think, have by now. It was in consideration for my list. It didn't quite make it, but not surprised at all that topped both lists, and I think it's a worthy winner. It's a great, great movie. But those are my favorites of the last 25 years. So next month, I'm going to be back continuing the Christmas Carol deep dive as we get into the Ghost of Christmas yet to come. But thank you for listening to this bonus episode. Scrooge, a Christmas Carol podcast, is written, edited, and hosted by Colin Murr. Theme music is Christmas Day by TRG Banks. And TRG Banks Snowfall is also used for interstitial music. Leaving a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, as well as liking, commenting, and subscribing on YouTube will be a big help to me. I'll be back next month with another episode of Scrooge, a Christmas Carol podcast. Until then, make sure to live in the past, the present, and the future, and ensure that the spirits of all three strive within you.